The January 18th regular meeting of the Cambria Community Services District Board of Directors is hereby called to order. It's 1:01 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We had a little bit of, just so that people might wonder what's going on who is watching this on, I guess it would be on TV. We have one member, and we'll get to that in a moment, one member who's remote today, one board member. So he was reciting the pledge while we were reciting it, and he was doing it over Zoom. And so a bit of confusion there, but we'll get through it. Next, establishment of quorum. There's a quorum, and at this point, I think we take action regarding the member who, Dr. Thomas, who is ill and is participating from a remote location. And per the government code, the board has to vote affirmatively to allow him to proceed to join us in the meeting. And there's a couple other, I believe he has to attest that there's whoever is over 18 in the area with him, he has to tell who's there and so forth. So Director Thomas, maybe you should cover that base.
Thank you, President Gray. And confirming still testing positive for the blasted COVID. So apologies, I cannot attend in person. Nobody wants this around. Thus, I would like to participate by teleconference and request the board take action to allow me to participate remotely. In accordance with Government Code Section 54953. And other person over 18 who's in the house, my wife Gail, is napping upstairs. The good news is we don't have to isolate anymore. The bad news is that's because she has COVID now too. So that's my bad. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Thank you, Director Thomas. Do I have a motion to allow Director Thomas to work remotely with us? Director Dean.
I move that we allow Director Thomas to participate in the meeting via Zoom based on the government code that he cited.
Yeah, thank you. A second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we allow Director Thomas to participate in this meeting remotely. Can I have a roll call?
Director Dean?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Of course, aye.
Director Farmer?
Well, if we have to, yeah, sure.
Okay.
President Gray?
Aye. Okay. Welcome aboard, officially.
Director Thomas's vote does not count.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Now, just so the public knows, there's not an unlimited ability to do this. I think you get 2 times in a calendar year to participate remotely, and this is Dr. Thomas's second time. So, but we wish him speedy recovery and plan to have him back here in person next meeting.
President Gray, I double checked on that.
Yeah.
That's only true for an agency that meets less than 10 times a year. Okay. If you meet more than 10 times a year, it's 20% of those meetings you can attend under 4997.
Okay. That's good to know, and probably maybe 4 or 5 meetings then.
Right.
I guess. Yeah. Good. Thank you. The clarification. Do we have a report from closed session? I believe we do.
We do. Thank you, President Gray. At the January 11th meeting, the board held a closed session with its real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property under negotiation is 2950 Santa Rosa Creek Road, assessor's parcel number 013-081-075. The agency negotiators are General Manager Matthew McElhaney and District Counsel Timothy Carmel. The negotiating party is Coast Unified School District, Union School District, I believe. Under negotiation is the purchase of the property as well as the purchase price and the terms of payment. No action was taken at the closed session.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Carmel. Is there any public comment on this item?
No.
No, thank you. Move on to the President's report, which I only have a brief mention to make of something which I think General Manager McElhaney will be talking talking about at more length. The Local Agency Formation Commission conducted its periodic review. It's called a Municipal Service Review of Cambria, of CCSD, and its obligations, its financial ability to meet them, and just a various, basically a pretty comprehensive look at how we're doing in terms of our ability to meet our obligations and our things we have under our authority. The website, the LAFCO website, has it on the agenda for today. But there was a meeting today where they essentially accepted the report and had some comments to make, and Mr. McElhaney will, I think, get to those in his report, right? Okay, thank you. That's all I had to say in terms of report. And in agenda review, this is the time when anybody wants to make a suggestion for either moving something on the agenda or eliminating it from the agenda. Please let me know at this point. With nothing in agenda review, we'll go on to board member communications. This is when individual board members, if they have something briefly to report on their activities, or ask a question for clarification, may do so now. I'll go around the table here. Anybody want to do this? Oh, Director Farmer.
Oh, it just dawned on me, and I should just probably mention this, that FFRP, the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, is having their annual meeting this coming Saturday at 10 o'clock. And it's at the Green Room at CCAT, which is near the Art and Theater right there at the old elementary school. And pretty much, I guess, anybody can attend if you're so inclined. So just so you know that. So the annual meeting, and then there's going to be a break for lunch, and then the monthly meeting. But obviously, since it only happens once a year, and I think some people do have a concern or an interest with regard to what type of decisions are being made by the board of directors of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve with regard to the future of the ranch for this coming year. So there you are, like their goals and objectives and other issues of importance.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Anybody else here wants to do it? Director Thomas, do you have anything you wanted to report on?
No.
Thank you. Move along to public safety. We have our Sheriff McDonald here, or Commander McDonald, right? Here in person for the Sheriff's Department report. Welcome.
Mr. President, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Happy New Year to the board, staff, the public. Stuart MacDonald from the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office. For the month of December 2023, in the Cambria area, we had 3 assault and battery calls. One was a call regarding an assault with a deadly weapon. One was a battery call, and one was domestic violence related. We had 17 disturbance calls. 12 of those were general disturbances, 2 neighbor disputes, 1 family dispute, 1 loud music complaint, and 1 loud party complaint. We had 3 burglaries reported. 2 of those were residential, and 1 was to a business. We had 1 theft that was reported, and that was a grand theft, which means it was a loss of over $950. We had 2 vandalisms reported. One was vandalism to a vehicle. The other was vandalism to a tree, although that circumstance was determined to be a civil issue between 2 neighbors. There were no mail thefts reported. We did have 1 citizen in Cambria report a phone scam, and that phone scam was indeed the spoofing of the sheriff's office. The name of one of the sergeants that works out of the coast station here in the Cambria area was used in that scam attempt, and that's where they are leaving messages or communicating to people that the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office has a warrant for their arrest and that they should go and immediately pay their fines by getting gift cards, which would never be a way that we would do business. So please, if you get a call that's identifying themselves as a deputy sheriff or any other official from the courts or the county, do not pay them any money. We have counters where we take fines and fees. The courts take that money directly over a counter where a receipt is issued, and we would never ask for payment over a telephone. We had 10 suspicious circumstance calls, 4 suspicious circumstances, 4 suspicious subjects, and 2 suspicious vehicles. The deputies that work in the Cambria area conducted 25 enforcement stops in December, 1 pedestrian stop, 1 bicycle stop, and 23 vehicle stops. And then they also engaged in 10 preventative patrol activities, 1 foot patrol, 2 patrol checks, and 7 on-site activities. And that is my report for December. I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from members of the board? Vice President Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, Commander McDonald. I just have a question for clarity on your report. So it says that you had 53 calls for service. How do you add up these numbers to get to 53?
So the enumerated statistics that I'm giving you is a subset of the total calls for service. We don't report out every call for service. There are several categories. Just as an example, if there were a coroner case in the community, we don't report that out separately.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and then there's like assist other agencies and other calls that just we're only highlighting the kind of the crime picture that people are mostly interested in.
Okay, thanks.
Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. Commander McDonald, good afternoon. I just want to get some clarification from you. Every once in a while on social media, there's somebody posing a question or expressing a concern. Why doesn't Cambria have like a sheriff's substation here? So perhaps you can explain why that isn't happening and how services get provided so folks should not be feeling any anxiety in that area.
We do not have a substation in Cambria. However, we do have a report room through our partners with CDF. What happens is the deputies that work in what's called Beat 3, which includes Cayucas, Cambria, San Simeon, and up to Ragged Point, they start their workday from Los Osos, where they put their gear on and get in a patrol car. Then they come up to the Cambria area and patrol and then answer calls for service. If they have a need to write a report, they'll go to that report writing room so that they stay within the beat area and within Cambria to be able to respond in a short amount of time. And so 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, we have assigned deputies in the Cambria area. In the very middle of the night, those hours from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., that car has responsibility for other areas as well as Beat 3, but up until 2 o'clock, there's a dedicated car within the Cambria Cayucas area.
All right, thanks very much.
See, Director Dean's light, your light is not on, right? That's good, yeah. Dr. Thomas, do you want to make any questions?
Thank you, President Gray. Nothing further.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on the law enforcement report?
No.
No, thank you. Well, thank you, Commander McDonald,
Thank you.
and hope to see you next month.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
And now we have a report from Fire Chief Michael Berkey. Welcome, Chief Berkey.
Good afternoon, President Gray, members of the board, members of the community and staff. So in the month of December, we had 2 total fires. One was a structure fire, one was it's categorized as an other fire, which was a homeless encampment fire under the bridge there at Highway 1. We had 65 total rescue and EMS, 4 total hazardous conditions, 10 total service calls, 5 total public service assists, and then let's see, good intent calls. We had 8 of those, and then a total of 6 false alarms for the total for December. So this being the last report for December 23, I kind of ran some statistics for the whole year, just in the year in closing. What we have, it's not included in the report. It's just something I brought today. So for the total 2023, the total calls that our agency ran was 1,066. Coincidentally, I just heard the statistics for 2022, and it was just around that same number. It's probably in I think it was like 162 or something from this morning's meeting. But everything was kind of, we ran a total of just 154 total public service assist type calls, good intent calls. We were about 195 for the whole year. We had 50 type false alarms and false calls, and then also 31 severe weather and natural disasters during that time. Our total fires in 2023 were 20, and then the complete rescue and EMS service type calls was 579 for the full year. So that's pretty much, like I said, in line with the rest of the years that we've been, service. So we're a little bit up, and it fluctuates, as you guys can see. That's why I'm trying to keep that tally going through our reports, so you can see kind of how as we go. And as we go into January, we'll be doing that through the whole year, just so you guys can watch the trends through the year. So keep that going. That pretty much concludes that portion of my report. I did today bring, we've been working diligently, myself and the staff have been working diligently to get the Genesis project up to speed a little bit. So I provided all the members of the board and our staff some magnets there to look at what we're going to do. So for the public's awareness, they are back on the table for the people that are here, but I'll kind of show them to what they look like. They're just a little magnet. And right here in this white portion here, all you do is just take a marker, put your zone. Once you know it, throw it on your fridge, and it's just going to remind, or wherever you want to look to remind yourself what your zone is. And then of course, have that app on your phone and all of those other avenues to get notified. So if anybody wants any sort of assistance with that, these are available at the fire department. I'm also available to hand them out. We did put these in our fire engine, so if they're out and about, they have them there as well. So we're trying to get them out as much as we can to the community and continue with that program.
Thank you, Chief Berkey. Any questions from members of the board? Director Dean.
Hi, thank you for the great report. I've got Pulse Point that gives me notifications, and I noticed that there was a fire early this morning on Camborne. Was that a structure fire or what?
Yes, so it would end up being a very small structure fire. I believe it was a dryer connection in the garage that ended up igniting. Very small, the crews put it out with just the CAL FIRE and the Cambria fire engine crew that was there. And yeah, so it went pretty well. Like I said, it was very small, mostly just a smoke type thing, the electrical, lit up, and then they put it out with.
Good reminder to
amount of
keep
water.
our lint traps cleaned out, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a connection, so it was an electrical issue. That's a great
Okay.
reminder to, yeah, make sure those are maintained. You know, those are pretty common, especially in the winter. You know, those more we're using heaters and dryers and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Thomas, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Brother Gray. Nothing further.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a little question about the 1-year totals you mentioned.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any trends, or that sounds like you say things are up, things are down, there's no real strong trend. On the rescue EMS, 579, I think you said, is that down or up? Because I get the impression from past reports that those are trending down a little bit.
I mean, it depends on the month, you know, so throughout the year, they're not really trending down too much. In the whole total that we're running, like I was mentioning, I think it was either last report or the one before that, where there are some changes in our types of calls being canceled, or, you know, the emergency calls that we're running. But generally speaking, once you look at the year as a total, it really hasn't changed too much for the last couple of years, especially the rescue and EMS. Honestly, the rescue and EMS has probably increased a little bit, where the cancels have probably gone down a little bit. So, and I'm still in the process of learning that and modifying our reporting system, so we're getting better as our crews are reporting things and changing. Image Trend is the platform that we use for that, and so we're diving into that. I've got a lot of we actually created a committee at our last Cambria Fire staff meeting to kind of head that and get more of our information a little bit more correctly and more efficiently.
Again, just one other question about reporting system. The monthly incident statistics page has only 4 columns in it, and one of them are different colors, well, two different colors for the total, but then there's a color for September. Is that the other blank columns because of changeover and how things are classified, or is just something that was not included?
No, so typically I think that was just a mistake probably on my part.
Okay.
That September should have been, usually that's the highlighted month that we're talking about. So I think that was just left in there and I didn't highlight December. So my error.
And so
I'm
the
not highlighted.
in January through August, that was just.
And we just hadn't done that yet
Okay,
for those.
okay.
And I definitely could have put those in there. And as we move forward, that's what it'll look like. I just wanted to continue from September.
Just there's nothing else going on. It's like,
No. Yeah.
reclassifying of data, whatever. It's good. Okay, that's good to know. Is there any public comment on this report?
No.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chief Berkey. Very good report, and we'll again see you next month at least, and probably a lot before that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Time now for Dr. Dean.
We might want to remind the public that there's going to be a Meet Chief Berkey session along with the Meet the GM session next Monday.
That's good to know. Yeah, they're going to be together actually, in right here in the hall. Yeah, and Jim McElhaney may have a little bit to say about that too. Yeah, that's good. It's time now for public comment. This is comment on items not on the agenda, but that are within the legal purview of this board. I have one speaker slip for Christine Heinrichs. Ms. Heinrichs, step forward, please.
Good afternoon. I want to thank General Manager McElhaney and Utilities Manager Jim Green for their presentation at last night's NCAC meeting. We also exchanged some email messages which helped me understand the EWS, SWF, WRF Coastal Development Permit application process going forward. I remained confused about some aspects, though, which I ask you to allow him to explain today. Will the CDP project description that utilities staff and consultants intend to deliver to SLO County Planning on January 30th, along with project components and the completion matrix, whatever that is, be a final version or a draft? The board unanimously decided at the April 20th, 2023 meeting that the staff should revise the previous project description, a job that has now been outsourced to consultant SWCA, quote, to bring the proposed draft of a modified WRF project description back to the board and hold a public hearing to receive community input prior to discussion and consideration of moving forward to submittal of the updated modified WRF project description to SLO County for the permit application. When will the requested public hearing be held? Will public comment from the community be considered in revising the project description again? How will that version be made available to the public? When can the public hear from Kevin Merck on the biological studies and the adaptive management plan? What about the steelhead? Thank you for clarifying these drafts and dates for the public.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. We have 2 written comments, and actually, Mr. McElhenney may want to comment on some of those questions, but after we finish with the public comment, I'll let you, if you wish. Ms. Dodson.
Sure. The first written comment is from Linda Prentice. As a many-year taxpayer on vacant land because of the no-build rule, I highly resent any public bathrooms being considered by Parks and Recreation or any other entity. The no new water facilities should be the same for all. Thank you. And the second written comment is from Leilon Whittaker. It's a broken record, but there still isn't a sign down there with the hours. And this is related to the dog park. Won't make much difference as my husband and I have to hear barking all morning into the evening. I was told that when we were ever to list our house for sale, we would have to put that there's a nuisance down there, which is going to decrease the value of our home. That's pretty depressing. Everybody brings their dogs there to bark, 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 bark. We have to hear it all day long, and then they take them home where they don't have to listen to them bark, bark, bark. I was told that the county can be sued if there's a nuisance down there. We're talking to an attorney, and I really don't want to, but in my opinion, the dog needs to be moved over to the right. The eucalyptus trees were down there before they did the EIR, which did help with the noise. We searched years for the best quiet place to build a house in 1999 so my husband can paint, and here we go years later. It's pretty depressing. Leilon and John Whittaker.
Thank you. Any more comment, written comment?
No.
Any more comment from the hall here? Thank you. Yeah, and Mr. McElhenney, if you want to answer the questions about the draft process, it might be, if you wish to now, you can, but.
If you would like me to.
Yeah, I'd like you to, if you can.
Or I can, it'll be a part of the general manager report
That's
as
what I'm
well.
saying, if it's part of your report, you'll do it then.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So we'll address some of those issues in a short time, actually. In fact, we're moving right along now, I think, to the general manager's report, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. This is the report from the general manager,
Back
Mr.
on deck.
McElhenney.
All right,
Please
thank you.
proceed.
Thank you,
Yeah.
President. So I'll try to summarize some of these areas because a lot of them reappear on the general manager's report, but I'll start with the Adaptation Planning Grant Round 2 draft program. We applied for Round 1. We were unsuccessful, and now we are tackling the Round 2 process. So we're looking at a few different projects that we may move forward with. I'm working with the R&I committee and Director Dean, Mrs. Amadei on some of those things, Mr. Meeks. And we're looking at various different projects that we might be able to go for this Round 2. We've been in contact with the program manager of that grant, so we're moving forward with that. We're not sure just yet if we'll direct some of our grant writing, our grant writer, our contracted grant writer towards this grant, because this one is pretty well spelled out and how you apply for the grant. And I think between myself, Mrs. Dodson, and the ad hoc group, we should be able to move that forward. So more on that to come. We did attend, staff, myself attended the LAFCO meeting this morning, in which they reviewed our municipal service review and sphere of influence. They unanimously adopted that MSR. There was no change to our sphere of influence. There was a robust discussion about Cambria and our water situation, and so they are aware of it. There were several questions directed at myself on the things that we are doing which will tie into a little bit of this discussion about the WRF project description. But I did tell them that we have ad hoc committees looking at sustainable water sources. I'm working with the utilities manager on different strategies and thinking outside the box in terms of sustainable water outside of the WRF. And so there was a lot of questions about that, and it was a healthy discussion. They appreciated staff being there. They appreciated the direction that we're taking, and openly acknowledging that we have to find a solution and that we're working towards it. So overall, it was a very good meeting, but there was lots of discussion there. And our utilities manager, program manager, and fire chief did a great job addressing all of their questions. Moving on, we do have a couple different recruitments going on for staff. We have an administrative technician 2 front desk position that we're recruiting for. We are recruiting for a water treatment operator, so you can check our website for that. EV charging station relocation. We're still working with the county on permitting for that, so that we haven't dropped the ball on that or let that fall to the wayside. We're still working with Toma Electric on that, and we're hoping to have some of that permitting through the county very, very soon. Cambria Skate Park, we're at the federal review level. We've submitted, staff has submitted the Sacred Lands File and Native American Contacts List request form to the Native American Heritage Commission. They have our request. It's been received. They estimate about a turnaround time of 4 weeks to hear back on that. And again, that's just a part of the federal review process, but we're working closely with the grant managers and are on time with that. Again, the fire chief will be here with me on Monday the 22nd for the kind of meet the GM, meet the fire chief. I'm only going to hold the chief his feet to the fire from 9 a.m. till about 12 because he's got a lot of things he's got to manage in his department. So we're going to cut him loose after that, but he'll be here to answer all your questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions about weed abatement. A lot of those bills are going out to those that had to have their lots weed abated that were on the public nuisance list. Last meeting, we worked with I handed Mrs. Blackwood, I believe, my card, and we were able to waive her weed abatement fees because of some mistakes that were made by the contractors. Mm-hmm. So we were able to clear. So if there are any issues, you can come and meet with the fire chief and myself, and we're happy to discuss it and work with the public. Chief already talked about Genesis Protect a little bit, but again, he'll be here that day if you have any questions. On to the coastal development permit discussion. SWCA, our contractor, had completed their draft of the project description. Staff, myself, and the ad hoc committee consisting of President Gray and Director Dean, utility staff, legal counsel have met multiple times on this project description, and we are fine-tuning it, but it is definitely a draft. We've met probably at least 3 times since we started working with our consultants. That draft from the staff side and ad hoc side is about 95% complete, and the next step of it is we will be meeting with, again, with the technical advisory committee, and we will be going to county planning to enter into preliminary discussions on its content, its draft content, and see where their opinions of that draft, if they have any further suggestions, if there's anything that we're missing that they would like to see, that gives us more input on that draft and could send us back to the drawing board, perhaps with our consultants or again with the ad hoc committee. Once that draft is finalized, we will absolutely bring it before the board as directed per the April 20th meeting. At that time, President Dean had directed us to bring it back for a public hearing to gather public input, to gather board input. That is 100% our intention. We are not going to deviate from that intention or anything there. So I just want to make sure that's clear that there's no nefarious acts by staff trying to bury the lead, so to speak, on this project description. Excuse me. However, we are working very hard so we bring a quality product forward to the board that's clear, concise, and delivers our expectations and intentions with that project description. So the January 30th meeting is a preliminary meeting of the preliminary draft. which is yet to be finalized. Once that finalized draft is ready to bring before the board, it will be made available as a public document. And I hope that clears up any confusion. Stewart Street tank construction, again, we've got that agreement in place. Contract has been signed. We're going to bring it before R&I just to give them a little more in-depth description on why we went with welded tanks, which we discussed last week. San Simeon Well 3, we had a little bit of a setback there because we had a contract with third gen pumps. They did not want to or couldn't at that time meet the bonding requirement, so they have subsequently pulled out from that contract, and now and our utilities manager will be able to speak on that a little bit more, and we're going back for additional quotes on that process. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions anywhere on my report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McElhenney. Any questions from members of the board? Director Farmer.
Not necessarily a question, although I would have wanted to get a little bit more detail on when the coastal development permit application would be available for both the board and the members of the public to see, but I can see that isn't anything that we can get anything relatively specific on. But what I wanted to comment on, I don't know if you noticed it, but when you mentioned that obviously you're going to be here this coming Monday to meet the general manager, and that the fire chief was also going to be here from 9 to noon, and then you said, but you couldn't hold his feet to the fire with regard to the time. So I don't know, I don't think you did that on purpose, but I thought it was kind of cute.
I was trying to be funny.
Cool. Well, I got it. So.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Anything, Director Dean or Vice President Scott? Director Thomas, you have any questions?
Thank you, President Gray. No, nothing further. We've addressed questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I just one little question, getting back to the timetable, which is obviously a little bit vague at this point about the project description. You mentioned April 20th as a date for possible hearing. I think it's kind of penciled in, or is that?
The April 20th date was when Director Dean was president and directed staff to bring the project description back.
Yeah, it's not the forward. That's April 20th, 23.
And this date is actually wrong when we talk about January 30th. I think Jim has an update on when we're going to meet with county, and I think it's February 1st. And so February 1st is when we would get the input from county, some information from the TAC committee, get some more eyes on it, because there's been some few changes in that draft. And then
more of those, yes.
Yeah.
So there's no set date for this target date yet, because there's several steps we have to go through
for the submittal to the county.
For the submittal, yeah.
It really depends on the feedback. Mm-hmm. You know, Mr. Green and I are pushing hard and fast, to move this piece forward and this application forward. Our hope is that we've done enough work as an ad hoc committee and staff and our preliminary meetings with the Coastal Commission and county, that this should be a pretty solid document to where we feel comfortable bringing it back to the board. I'm not sure if the board would like this sent to R&I or some other subcommittee, or we could, because we have an ad hoc committee on it, we could bring it straight to the board. But any eyes on it prior to coming to the board would slow the process a little bit. But my hope is we have relatively little changes to make in the document because of how hard we've been working. And I don't expect a whole lot of input from the county that would change the speed of this being brought before the board. So I would think, don't quote me, Haley, but I would like to, I would love to see it in front of the board by March.
Okay. Director Dean.
I don't see any reason for it to go before R&I, especially since we're going to have a full public hearing and bring it before the board. And I want to assure everybody that, President Gray and I, as the ad hoc committee, have been working very closely with the general manager of the utilities department and district council in going through this whole project description line by line by line. And we've been working very hard on it. And I believe that the public and the board will be pleased with the changes that are being made in the project description. And I'm looking forward to it coming before the public for a hearing. But we do need to know from the county if we have answered all of the questions that they had on the information hold. So that's a key step for staff to bring it before the county to know for sure we've covered everything. But it has been a very long, detailed process.
I can attest to that as well. Any other questions or comments? Any public comment?
Yes, Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Ms. Bettenhausen?
Thank you very much,
Please
Mr.
speak.
President.
Mhm.
You can hear me today?
Definitely, yeah.
That's because I am connected in my machine. That was my mistake last time. I have a question. I just heard the general manager refer to the Coastal Commission in the same sentence as TAC. I need to know before the meeting who is on TAC officially, and will the Coastal Commission make any kind of decision roughly, because it's not the commission on TAC, I assume, before the county makes its decision? This is very unclear to me. So why would the Coastal Commission even be involved at this point? I was not assisted in my understanding by the comments made by the general manager about the meetings that they've had with the Coastal Commission, or the meeting they've had. I would like some clarity on the role of the Coastal Commission in relationship to TAC and who the members of TAC are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No.
That question actually goes back to I think it's the in-stream flow study process. Mr. McElhaney, could you answer that, or is it something you want Mr. Green maybe to do?
I'll tackle it in pieces. I'll
Yeah,
tag
yeah,
team
'cause
it
it's-
with Mr. Green because he'll have some better insight on TAC committee and its composition. Yeah, absolutely. The Coastal Commission is not in play here, so to speak, to be honest. In terms of the permitting process in the beginning, right? We come up with our project description, the application is to the county, and then it's, if it gets appealed to the Coastal Commission, which I think we all know, that's very high probability that we will be in front of the Coastal Commission through some sort of appeal process, whether it's the public that appeals it or the Coastal Commission has issues with it. On that note, we started engaging the Coastal Commission when I arrived at the district in April of 23, because I wanted to engage the Coastal Commission in discussions on where were we going wrong with this project. And some of that had to do with issuing intent to serves, will serves on certain properties, which created some contention with the Coastal Commission. And then again, the Coastal Commission had been essentially talking to us for quite a while about the environmental impacts of the WRF and what we were going to do to mitigate those impacts in environmentally sensitive habitat. So we started engaging them and talking about what those mitigation efforts would look like, what they would be. And it was a robust discussion, essentially, where the Coastal Commission had said, you have been going on 9 or 10 years now, you've yet to have any mitigation efforts in that area from the disturbance of the WRF, and it's becoming a problem and a compounding issue. When we opened up that dialogue is when we started to gain some traction with the Coastal Commission, and they were willing to work with us and talk with us about what those mitigation efforts would look like. And we were opening up the dialogue about returning the Title 27 pond back to ESHA, which is a huge step on the CCSD's part to recognize that we understand there's impacts on ESHA and we're going to do something about it. So those conversations with the Coastal Commission were preliminary, gain better understanding of where we've gone wrong. Now, they're not the next step in the process, but they're always looming. As I think we all know in this community, that the Coastal Commission is looming on a lot of our different projects. From there is when we started to engage the county, working with our consultants, looking at the information hold, and then looking at some of those mitigation efforts that'll be wrapped into the adaptive management plan discussion of it a little bit in our project description. As far as who is on TAC, I'll turn that over to Mr. Green and he'll be able to fill you in.
Mr. Green here now, or is he? Okay,
Yes, he is.
yes, it's just, yeah, please put him on.
Hi, good afternoon. Are you there?
Good afternoon, you were here, yes.
Great. As far as who is on the TAC right now, as far as individuals, I don't have any names specifically. I know that there are stakeholders in the county, and county members are a part of that. If that's answering the question for you.
Yeah, I guess my question I have is who's, like, what entities are represented? Because I do think it's like a number of, anybody who is these stakeholders like Fish and Wildlife, Coastal Commission, County.
State parks.
State parks, yeah, they're all
Yeah.
kind of, as I understand, all part of that group, or
Yeah.
have
All the stakeholders that are,
Yeah.
that you're all aware of are all
Yeah.
part of that.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's kind of what the question I think was about initially. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. McElhaney, too. Anybody else have questions up here on the, Mr. Director Farmer?
Thank you. I neglected to ask this question earlier with regard to the contract that we had with Third Gen Pump, and they didn't meet the qualifications, so we're having to go through this process again in getting a new contractor and approving the contract. So how long will that take, and should there be any concern with regard to the functioning of San Simeon Well 3? Because I believe that pump is kind of degrading fairly quickly in the scheme of things.
Yes, Director Farmer, I'll turn part of that over to Mr. Green, but I know that he and Mr. Reaper are working diligently on finding out some other proposals and bids on that work, and they should be able to answer you in terms of where we are in that status-wise.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we can move on to, I guess, the facilities and resources report portion. Yeah. 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 Thank you.
President Tom Gray and directors, how you guys doing? So with the report that I have for this month that we have, the very first one. So as you can tell, Haley worked with Haley on these here. She ended up, she had some frames and she went ahead and put some photos inside of them here in the hallway. So we ended up decorating a little bit of that, trying to put a little more color back into the vets hall here. I did actually turn around and this last Friday ended up polishing out the floor in there. So I redid the hallway, the entryway, stuff of that nature, working my way. Areas that I know that we can get by with for the time being, because I know the vet floor in here needs to be a full redone on there. Yeah, we're just trying to fix, as we go, little bits here and there. As you can tell with the next slide, the one thing that I've noticed since I've been here was the time clocks. I know as we get older, we need to focus a little better, a little further distance. So that's what I did. And went ahead and went to the analog, or moved it from the analog, went to the digitals. The one things about these here, they sync with each other. You can turn them off. If you need to, you can black them out. So if people wanted them turned off during certain events and stuff of that nature. That was a big thing. Like right now, it's on the low setting. There's actually 4 more settings you can put them on to make them extremely brighter. I was just looking at long-term. I know with the staff climbing a ladder, getting up there, changing out batteries, stuff of that nature. So I just went ahead and hard mounted them. They're wired into the outlets on the back side. So that way they're dialed in. We have nothing to worry about for at least 5 to 6 years. Oh, okay. The next one was going to be I ended up working with the dog park and several people in the community about the concerns about the dog barking. I know this has been a big topic of, certain times, dusk till dawn is what we originally had on the right-hand side up on the fence and also on the sign. There was a variance in between 6 o'clock and, there's times roughly about 7:45, 8 o'clock where the is dismissed, and then there is people out there at times. After working with the dog park and looking at the time that is out there nationwide with our community, where the sun comes up and stuff. So basically, the sun comes up, in between about 7:15. This gives a little leadway in that point. I know the community is asking questions like, who changed it? Like I said, I worked with the dog park on that notion till dusk. That was the big thing, because there is times during the summer where the sun does not go down until 8, almost 9 o'clock at night. I figure if we give up that half an hour, we make it up throughout the year. And even with the community of the dog park, they came to and understand, like, you know what, that makes sense. We're able to work with them and make sure that we're pleased on both sides of the community, and especially with the dog community. The next one would be the facilities and resource building. As you can tell, this one here, when it flooded in March 10th of 2013, they did a removal. Service master came in and removed everything. Flooring, the sheetrock, the insulation, everything whatsoever. So with the guys and myself, we've turned around and reinstalled the insulation, put the sheetrock back up, taped it. We did have a company come in and mud it and texture it. That was one thing that we were lacking in. But then as soon as that was done, within a 3-day period, we ended up repainting it. So as you can tell today, that's where I've been. I've been scrubbing floors with the diamond plate, scrubbing the masking from the tiling off the floor. That's on a weekly rental. So that's why I'm kind of rushed to get this done, especially being down a certain individual, only working with one crew. It's kind of treacherous right now with all this. But yeah, we're rolling, and I am anticipating being in there by the end of the month. One of the things that I did do, I know a lot of the furniture and material that was in there was hard mount, big desks, counters. What I've done, I've turned it into mobile, 4-foot desks, less than 45 pounds with the dividers, cabinets, everything's up off the ground, higher than 31 inches. Last year, the water that came in was over 31 inches that flooded the facility. They can still stay on the walls. A lot of the kitchen, that was the other thing, the cabinets. I'm looking into the stainless steel counters with a stainless steel sink. So that way, if we have to, we can pull it out, pressure wash it, we're functioning again. Because like I said, this has happened, within the past year, and we're still not functioning. We're not in there. And this is one of the things I looked at to progress if it ever does occur again, which there's a possibility it will, but we would be able to go back in there a little bit faster on that notion. With the Fiscalini Ranch, there was a couple of trees that we ended up having removed. There was a couple against some residentials and some trails. Those were removed. We ended up paying a contracted company here in town. They went ahead and did that, and they did drop off roughly about three and a quarter bins of wood chips. So I know Brian Morgan, the Fiscalini, friends of the Fiscalini, were extremely happy with all that, because that does help out with the trails. That's our biggest thing, is the erosion and the roots and everything of that nature, keeping everybody safe out there. That's the big thing, keeping it from getting real muddy. So yeah, I know there is more coming down the line with the Fiscalini. Actually been out there, been in contact with Kitty Conley and Brian, and looking at some different trees that do need to come down. There's along trails. I mean, there's roughly about 8 different locations that I know of that I've found, quite a few that need to be taken down. So looking ahead, what we have, recruitment. As far as I know, talking with General Manager here, we're looking hopefully here in the beginning of February. We should at least have one, I believe, rolling into the position that we have available there, and start getting hands and feet dirty on that notion. The Santa Rosa Creek cleanup. So I know this is another concern of the communities, from basically the Main Street walkway all the way down to the end down here by wastewater. I know I've reached out to the Coastal Commission, talked to several different people. I finally got a confirmation email with them. They required me to turn around and look into the CDP, go through the county, turn and get that situated, get a hold of the Fish and Wildlife and everything else to work on, you know, the riparian corridor all the way across from our property side all the way down to the location that it needs to be addressed. So that's where we are. I'm filling out the paperwork, going through that process. It's a little new to me, but I know I'm going to be reaching out and getting that squared up so we can get that rolling as soon as possible. So the facilities here at the vet, the barbecue. So we're still working with the Legion on that one to get it relined. Because I know every Friday it's kind of a farmer's market's always barbecuing, and it kind of puts a little slow damper on it, digging it out and stuff of that nature. We'll continue, like I said, with the renovation of the F&R building there at the yard until, like I said, it should be within the first week of February. And still continually working with the Fiscalini. Any questions or anything?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gurry. That actually, I do have some questions. I want to go to the other members of the board first. That was an excellent report, though. And I like the pictures. You know.
Thank you.
Any questions from members of the board? I think Vice President Scott has one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. What kind of a mushroom is this?
I thought it was gorgeous out there
I
walking
did
around,
too.
and I don't even have a clue. And I am sorry, the color, it captivated me when we were out there. I was out trimming up a tree that fell onto the ranch,
Oh.
and I was like, you know what? I'm stopping and taking a picture. That
So
made me
it-
stop in my
it's-
tracks.
It's actually there.
Yes,
Great.
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Dean.
Okay, my question was on the Santa Rosa Creek cleanup, and you answered it because you are going to be working with Fish and Wildlife for guidelines on that, because I remember we had to work with Fish and Wildlife when we were working on the pipeline across the pedestrian bridge and some other things. But I wanted to thank you again for the clocks. Okay, not only are they easier to read, but the time matches between the two of them. Before, you know, you'd look at this clock and it'd say one thing, and then the other one was 5 minutes behind, and it was a little bit hard to, when I was president, to be able to say, we'll return back at this time, because which clock are you looking at? So I do appreciate that, and the hallway looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have a comment from Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray, and FYI, that is an Amanita muscaria.
There it is.
Those, you know, I've seen, I mean, literally plate size. I mean, and you probably surmise this, but it is an indication of a healthy ecosystem in the root systems under the ground. So it is a joy to see when the mushrooms come out. We also do have signs at several locations on Fiscalini Ranch Preserve indicating no foraging. Each year we will see people out there with bags, but this is one of the mushrooms you don't want to put on the dinner plate. And also, so a huge thank you to Mr. Aguirre and the sign that he showed there on the left, park hours 7:30 a.m. to dusk. That's on the right-hand side as you're driving in. There's another sign, identical, a bit smaller, at the gate into the dog park. I guess the next wave is to ensure that we enforce that to the benefit of the public living up above the dog park, Leilon and John and their friends.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a couple. I also wanted to comment on the clock, which is a huge improvement. Because as Director Dean says, you know, we could be looking at one time there, and the audience is looking at another time there, and you know, we don't know exactly which one's right, and also it's easier to read. I also wanted to comment or ask a question about the tree, the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve update when you talk about tree removal. What are the criteria for determining whether there are a lot of dead trees? Let's say, determining which ones you take down at any given time? Is it safe? Is it closeness to residences, or is it closeness to trails, or like how do you make the selection of which ones? Because you have to do, there are a lot of them out there that you can't get to right away, I'm sure.
Correct, correct. As you could tell, even just by looking at the picture here that we have on that spread, it was already dead. It was already dying out. So that's a big indication out there. Just walking, you'll notice you got several orange trees, the pines that are out there. That's a good indication that they're dead. So when they're within that trail, you want to look at the distance of their falling capabilities. If it falls within the residence of that nature, like the one we did remove here in the main picture next to the residence, that one was less than 15 feet from the house. So we got a call from the residents, which, you know, totally respectable. And we jumped on that one as soon as we could to turn around and have that removed. Along the trails is going to be the same thing. Anything that has, you know, widow makers, stuff of that nature, broken branches, stuff of that nature, you can tell when they're getting close. Serious leaners, that's another thing. If they're alive, that's the big thing. If it's a hazardous tree, I know there's a way of doing it with the fire department, having them come out, look at it and say, you know what, hey, it is hazardous to the community within the, you know, the region of the trails and stuff of that nature, and then things can be removed from that point.
Leaners, those trees that are
yeah, I mean,
way off center. Yeah.
Yeah, there is one
vertical.
currently out on Fern Canyon that comes from one of our lots. It's going across Fern Canyon Road, and it's adjacent and locked into another tree across the road that's actually in our lot also. So that's one I'm working with another contractor to turn around and come out and look at and see what we can figure out to set it down, because that's a lot of traffic control and stuff of that nature on there.
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you for a very good report. Any public comment?
No.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll move along to the utilities, right?
Thank you.
Let me make sure of this.
And finance report?
Finance manager's report, yes, and then utilities. General Manager McEnany. Is your mic on?
Hello?
Oh, there you are, yeah.
Okay, sorry. She's very modest. So we just got our first investment report for the quarter that ended December 31st, 2023 from our investors at Optimize. And for the quarter of October, November, consisting of October, November, December, we saw an increase in returns of $87,262.
Just one quarter, right?
One quarter. Last year in its entirety, our LAIF returns were $95,000. So the effort and work that Ms. Fritz put in working on these different investment strategies have already paid off right in front of our eyes. So,
Ms. Fritz, you got a nice head start in your report there. Please,
Any
please proceed.
questions? Thank you, General Manager. So, President Gray, directors, my finance manager report, included in this agenda is the expenditure report for December 2023, which is in item 6A. I would say there's nothing out of the ordinary. I did my little graphs. I tried a new graph, and this one is looking at an annual comparison of our investment accounts. So I will continue. I do like this one, so I think I will continue this one as well as other ones. We are working on an investment report. I do get quarterly reports. I was going to try and include it in my quarter 2 report that will be coming before the board next month. Or, I'm sorry, 2 months? I think we're going to finance next.
I think it's next, well, it's next, I think it's next month.
Yeah.
This month to finance. No, this month to finance, right?
Yes, yes. So, but that didn't work out for this cycle, so we're working that out. So eventually you will see a detailed report of our investment portfolio and the earnings and all that. So we're working on that. Right now I am really heavily in the audit, and the auditors are coming next week. So hopefully that will be underway, and we'll be able to finalize that sooner rather than later. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions first from the board? Dr. Thomas?
No, I have a couple of questions on the expenditure report, but we'll get to that later.
Okay. I have no questions either. Other than to mention that I think we were that investment report that Ms. Fritz was talking about, I think will be coming before the Finance Committee next month, I believe. I think we tentatively set it for that, right?
Yes, I got a draft of it today, so I was working with the advisors on timing. And we got a draft today, but just with the audit coming up, I'm really focused on that. And so the general manager and I will be providing, coming with feedback to the advisors and getting that back. And we will definitely have something for you next
Good,
month.
thank you. Yeah, and yeah, stay focused on the audit. Thank you very much. Any public comment on this one?
No.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to utilities. Mr. Green, I think, right?
Hi, good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
I'll be presenting the utilities report for the month of January. We'll begin with wastewater and some annual preventative maintenance before the wet season begins. We took a look at our bearings in the blower room and some of the blowers, and they were indeed running a little bit hot, so they were removed, re-greased. There was some servicing of those that was performed at that time too. We do keep several parts on hand just for replacement in emergency situations and for preventative maintenance. So wastewater staff did that during the month of December. Our second clarifier, our Coleman gear drive, which is a pump motor, had excessive wear on the drive chain. Staff internally took it apart. We ordered a new pump, which was scheduled to arrive on December 27th. Still not has arrived, almost a month later after its due date, when lead time was due. But we have again used some old parts off the shelf and kept that running on the interim. And our collections team out in the community has jetted and cleaned just short of 1 lineal mile in some of the residential areas of the community, which is a fantastic job during that month. And also planned in the community is several manhole cover and collar replacements. There's some out there that are just starting to become a little bit hazardous to drive on, trip hazards for walking. So there are 6 that we have scheduled. They were scheduled for earlier this month. Obviously, we had some rain events, and we're looking forward to doing that probably in the next couple of weeks, at least beginning a couple of those 6 for replacements. Move down to water, where water distribution and staff replaced several full line replacements from main to meter on some issues that were reoccurring, and it was just time for some of these lines to be replaced. They were couple time or 2-time repeaters as far as leaks. Also, if you've been on the Moonstone Beach Drive walking, you notice an enclosure off to the side there, about halfway down that drive. There's some handicap parking put in. State Parks got some funding to put in some handicap parking. Well, our appurtenance, which is our air gap there for that line, which helps maintain atmospheric pressure in that line, was struck by them. Fortunately, we reached an accord with State Parks, and we were able to move that device, raise it up, put it on a nice concrete pad, and put an enclosure over it to protect it from the environment and elements. And then we put 2 bollards up around it here during the month of December, because we noticed people were parking precariously close to that. That is a 16-inch main underneath there, and we definitely don't want another repeat of what happened on Main Street again. So we did some measures to protect that. Also, while we have our aquifers full from the recent storm events, we did some hydrant flushing in some dead ends of the system. That's just to help maintain water quality. Some of those dead ends, you'll have some iron bacteria and buildup. Fortunately, we've flushed the system annually, and we don't have a lot of dead end buildup and so forth in there. During that time, though, we do take water quality samples and analysis and check chlorine residual. Then again, just for water quality. This is also a good opportunity for staff to get out and exercise those valves, make sure those isolation valves are working in those specific areas. Kind of in combination for water and wastewater, we had budgeted to repair our Heath Lane Drive, and that's off of Windsor. And if any of you have ever been out to the wastewater plant, since the March 9th storm in 2023, you realize that it's a mess. It was beating the heck out of our trucks, and we haul a lot of trailers through there. And we're trying not to rattle our new equipment or old and gently used equipment loose or have it fallen apart there. So we did complete that, and it's a fantastic new drive to enter and have ingress and egress to the plant on. And also we uncovered a manhole that had been buried there for probably decades. So we did find some extra areas in wastewater distribution system that we went ahead and put a new manhole cover and collar on, as well as raised our G5 boxes, which are our isolation valve boxes for water, which we have a total of 4 there in that drive. Want to give a big shout out and congratulations to our new operator in training, who not only passed his water grade treatment 2, but his water distribution grade 2 training exam during the month. So that's a huge accomplishment. One of the benefits from COVID in this is these exams used to only be offered twice a year, every 6 months. So it's really difficult to get new operators certified up. Very difficult tests, even the grade 2, a very difficult test. Owen Purcell is also a Cal Poly graduate, so he scored in the 90 percentile on this. So it's fantastic. Give him a round of applause for that. Also, I'll make mention that we did some billing cycle reads. Those began on the 26th, and those were our final year-end reads. Those are taking about 2 weeks now in total to do, and we still have around 2,200 meters that are not reading or transmitting. And when I say reading, that is they're physically reading volume through the meter. They're just not responding back to our radios or our meter infrastructure. We also did some wet weather preparation here. It was kind of late, but it was very difficult to get roofers out, and we re-roofed the Lemert pump station roof. As you know, last March 9th storms also breached the integrity of that roof so bad that it ruined or shorted out our automatic transfer device there that takes when PG&E falls out there, which we have very poor PG&E power in that neck of the woods. When that drops out, our generator fires up autonomously. Well, the storm there breached the roof through the skylights and got through that ATS. So the ATS was replaced and the roof was replaced. Obviously, we replaced the ATS after the roof, and we have that running autonomously now, so we don't lose pressure. That portion of Lemert is under constant variable frequency drive, so we're constantly pumping and circulating water to a minimum 50 PSI in that area. So it's a very critical part of the infrastructure for that neck of the woods. We did some other maintenance around some of our transmitting radio towers that, all this wet weather and sun that we've had have caused additional growth, and we're causing signal interference. So water staff got out there and did some trimming and some landscape maintenance. I want to touch on the San Simeon Well 3 pump replacement project. It's very unfortunate. We wanted to kind of give a younger upstart who had a great price for repairing the well, for replacing the well rather, a shot at replacement. Unfortunately, it's unattainable for him to get bonding. So we've gone back out to bid. We've sought 3 additional bids and 3 rebids and a third new one. We received 1 proposal in. I'm working with Precision Pump right now on specifications for it, and we should get the remainder of those 2 finalized proposals next week. We'll be going to R&I in February. We'll have all the proposals, and we can have some review and discussion during that time for replacement of that well. Director Farmer, to answer your question, we are still operating SS3 intermittently. We're, trying to be careful on it, but we're also trying to rest some of our other duties that we have on our other pumps out there. And I'll mind you that SS1 is not in operation right now because it is groundwater under direct influence of surface water. And we all know that the San Simeon Creek is flowing out there. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take those at this time.
Any questions from members of the board? Director Dean.
Okay, I was going to ask whether the San Simeon Wellfield transmission main project layout options is going to be coming before R&I in February as well.
Yeah, we have a preliminary report that was just delivered, and we have a meeting with them discussing what we have now as 3 very viable alternatives and a 4th alternative. And after we have some discussion, we will be bringing that forward with all the PDRs to FNR in February as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I said FNR, I meant R&I.
I knew what you meant.
Right. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. Just to follow up on Director Dean's question, in the San Simeon Wellfield Transmission Main Project item, the last item here, consultant will continue to work on PDR, a preliminary design report, and get a draft to the district by the end of November. I just wanted to know which November was that meant to apply to? Are we talking about November of last year and it's a little late? Or are we talking about the end of November, like 11 months from now?
Oh, no, we currently have that PDR. We want to review and discuss it with the consultant. And I'm not sure if that was just mistyped or misspoken in that context. But no, we currently have that, and we'll be discussing that with them next, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, President Gray. On page 24, I just thought, holy smokes, that's quite a few issues with the blowers. I've got several questions, but probably one at a time. But so will ECM4, the blower system improvements, eliminate this, recurrence of these issues?
Absolutely. So what we're talking with ECM4 right now, and this is part of the 70%, and this is what kind of the engineering piece at the end, it's always the little things that kind of nag at the end here, which is taking this ECM a little bit longer to complete the 100% on as far as engineering. We're talking about, instead of having these massive units, 2 of them operating at the same time with all this electrical draw, we're going to split that up into smaller units and stagger them around at several plant locations and be direct feeds into those areas, like the clarification, the clarifier basin, the aeration basin, so that way you'll have a group or kind of like a regionalized blower that'll feed those specific areas instead of having these massive blowers. I mean, ECM is energy control, right? Modules, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use less energy, and these devices are more efficient than our older versions of, and they'll have a longer duty life and cycle, and the maintenance is much less expensive as well.
Sweet, thanks. Page 29, you mentioned the Lone Palm Drive. They're at the CCSD flag lot.
Yes.
What is the nature of the communications we have there?
Well, without giving away anything to terrorists so they can shut us down here, that is all of our water and wastewater communications to and from the well field and our effluent ponds.
Yeah, got it. I mean, so it's a main communications trunk.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
It is protected, and I don't want to make it sound like anybody can jump out there, but we all know there's some terrorism at some utilities throughout the countries, and so I kind of keep that a little more guarded. But yeah, that is all communications for water and wastewater are routed through 2 antennas there.
Thanks. And on page 29, water supply status, you talk about the water year. Water year, remind me, that is consistent with our fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And
It coincides with the rain season.
yeah, thought so. And then on page 32, you talk about the utility vault and not having to run the sidewalk past that point. And I've been wanting to ask for some time. There's two vaults there. There's the bigger one on the right, the smaller one on the left. You know what I'm talking about? Which utility vault are you talking about on page?
Is this for the skate park project?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, right across the street there.
Right. Those are both PG&E boxes.
Okay.
So those are several hundred thousands of dollars to move. And probably several years out if we ever, the NCAC was insistent on putting a sidewalk there. So that's under county's purview. All rolled gutters, streets, sidewalks is all county purview. We had been already cleared with county to do our DG walkway there in front of there. And they were not in favor, I'll say, of moving that utility box either.
Gotcha. So will it be cement walkway to the right, to the southeast of that, or?
Yeah, in front of the skate park entrance, yes. Yes, but not on the west facing side of, I guess if you're headed north on Main Street, right to the right there, that will be DG and the street parking and all that will remain as it is.
Gotcha. So as you're facing it, not to the left.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what, thank you so much.
And our property only runs so far. They had requested like a sidewalk all the way to, what is it, Mimosas there? And, you know, 2/3 of that isn't even our property to construct on.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions from the board? Dr. Farmer.
Yes, I still had a couple of questions and comments to make with regard to the well field, the San Simeon water line. Excuse me for being a little bit confused here. So I want to ask first off, with regard to this project, and it says up here on page 32, as of the end of December, 13.6% of the work has been completed with regard to this project. So first, what I'd like to ask is, do we have any ballpark idea with regard to when the permanent line will be installed? And I know it's going to take time. There's going to be obviously some serious cost involved. But I think people are concerned about, well, when will we have something permanent with regard to both the water and the effluent lines? And also, and maybe this is just my curiosity, and I was talking with General Manager McElhaney yesterday and reminding Director Dean and myself and her husband Alan, we happened to arrive about the same time, just as they were putting in that temporary line, and we were really impressed by the work they were doing. But I just wanted to follow up, how often is it necessary to, every once in a while, examine that temporary line to make sure everything is functioning well? And if so, how often does that get done? Just to allay any anxiety, because I think there's people out there that are concerned, well, it's a temporary line, and so they're concerned about, well, could anything go wrong? So I'm just trying to get some clarification from you on these items to allay any public concerns or fears. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start at the top there, Director Farmer. Yeah, it's a huge concern for us. Staff walks that nearly 3,000 linear feet monthly. We also walk it pre and post any large storm events. That pipe does meander a bit, and that was the intention of HDPE. When we use that we use the same exact HDPE when we put in service line from meter to main, and you know, they make you snake it, or that's the way we were instructed or told or to lay it initially. So that's what Hartselle Construction did at that time. They put about an extra 300 feet in there just to give it that ebb and flow in those storm events. And it has stayed I mean, that could probably last another 30 years out there, even in the direct sun and what have you. But our intention is to have the design and then go RFP for construction as soon as we can meet, review, and discuss and approve an alternate for alignment. And construction on that would, I see us, if everything goes smoothly and we can reach an accord on the alignment, and construction will be expensive, but I mean, I can see us being under a year out on this as far as shovel ready. Remember, there are some prohibitive things. We have to catch the environmental part of the shoulder. So the shoulder going into season and coming out of season. So there are still some environmental that isn't complete, and it's not complete because we have to experience a certain type of season to make, to write that report, to complete that report.
Mr. Green, I just want to thank you for considering I just kind of dropped this on you, for a fairly complete response, and especially allaying any concerns that folks might have with regard to that temporary line and its functioning, and we shouldn't be concerned at all, it sounds like. So thank you.
Well, lest we not forget, we had stainless steel pipe on the pedestrian bridge for over 5 years. And that probably shouldn't have been up there for more than a couple months, and it kind of just hung out there. I think it got graffitied and kicked around a little bit, but the San Simeon effluent pipeline and transmission line is one of our top priorities here. I mean, that's still a concern. Every time I drive by, I can't help but rubberneck over and just look at it, make sure I can still see it. I'm sure if it was leaking, it would be more than obvious. But yeah, it's definitely constantly on my mind, especially when we get into these huge rain and storm events. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Any public comment?
No.
Okay. Any public comment from the audience here? Hearing none, I thank you, Mr. Green, for the excellent report. We'll move on to the consent agenda and then take a little break, I think, after that. As always with consent agenda, all the matters are to be approved with one motion. If any member of the board wants to have any get any information, have a simple question to ask, they can ask it. They can also request to have an item taken off the consent agenda to be considered individually. So first of all, are there any questions or requests to move an item off the agenda? Director Dean.
I don't need to remove anything off the agenda, but I do have a couple of questions for clarification on the expenditure report.
Please proceed.
Okay. On page 52, the bottom items, the fuel from J.B. Dewar, it looks like all of the fuel is charged to the fire department and the F&R department. Is each department charged separately for fuel? What happens to the wastewater department and the water department? How do they get charged?
There's more on the next page.
So our invoices are paid directly from the fire. The fire department pays for their own fuel, and F&R pays for the fuel for the rest of the district. And then I, on a quarterly basis, get fuel reports from facilities and resources, and I prepare journal entries to move the appropriate amount of the expense to water and wastewater.
Okay, and yes,
WRF.
I do know it overlaps onto the next page.
But those journal entries will not be, I don't think they're not going to show up on this expenditure report, so.
Okay, I'm assuming that each department has their own fuel key cards too, so you have a way of.
Correct, that's how we keep track of who's using the fuel.
I have one more question, if it's okay. On page 54, under Paso Robles Ford, do we always take our trucks over the hill to be serviced? Is there nowhere locally we can do it to save the travel time?
I'm going to have Jim to speak to that, yeah.
Sorry, Denise, I didn't mean to step on you.
Green.
So when we have major repairs, we take it to Ford. We also have 2 newer vehicles that are still under warranty Honestly, it's either there or Slow Ford, and the repair center at Paso Ford is much better. That's usually taken home with and dropped off after a shift. So it's actually your water superintendent who drives, basically off the clock and drops that off, and then, we'll pick it up and then bring it back when the repair is done. For small repairs, oil changes, tire plugs, services, we keep it local. We take them to Gerber's for that. Gerber's also has a very long-standing clientele, and they're harder to get into and schedule some of those larger repairs. So the wait is a little longer term, and we need those vehicles in service. So Paso's a little bit better price for repair than Gerber's as well. So that's kind of contingent on that as well. But as far as larger repairs, we do trust the Paso Robles branch, Ford.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. Question, page 57, State Water Resources Control Board, 61,000 in in various permitting fees. And a couple of questions, but my first thought was, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. And then I looked at last year's report, and last year it was 148 grand. So one, how is it so much less expensive? Obviously, good thing. And then the other question is difficult to compare, because last year each line item description is an entirely different set of words. So it takes a bit of hard to compare. So I guess first question is to Jim.
Yeah, I'm scrolling down. What page was that on again?
On 57.
57.
57. Well, while I'm scrolling,
You get all the NPDES stuff.
So yeah, there's several. The water department has 3 alone, including the WRF. The WRF is a little more expensive because it does include that NP, that National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System fee, along with that. Some of the other larger ones for the water department are based on population and how many services. If you're at 3,300 services and under, you pay a discounted rate. If you're at 3,301 and above, which we are, you pay a higher tier rate. And then the next bracket or tier is 10,001 and above services. So it's a large gap. So we barely eke over that 3,300 mark, and then we have quite a distance before that 10,000 service mark. But so that's why some of those additions are high. And I'd have to look at some of the timing, because these permit fees, these annual permit fees are obviously annual, they're once a year, and they've remained pretty static. As long as I've been billing and coding these for over half a decade, they've been around they're significant dollar figures, yes, but they've been around the same number or figure.
Yeah, I sent a query to the general manager, but just, the big difference is wastewater treatment plant permit last year 114,000, and this year 26,785. Are we doing something right? Did we get lucky, or is there another shoe to drop?
Honestly, just because I've just started diving into the wastewater billing and coding here over the last 6 months, I can't explain that without doing some homework. So I don't want to misquote or misrepresent why we have that reduction, or why we had that maybe significant increase last year. I know we did reset our permit that's effective this year. Billing for that would have been kind of initialized last year. So I don't know if that was part of that, because there's a lot of correspondence fees and administrative fees that go in when you roll out a new permit or update a permit for an agency. So that uptick last year may have been contingent on that factor.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I sent the general manager a rack up, so he's got that. He can send that to you. And then just one other question. on Tyler Technologies. I think that's on the same page.
It's the last line item on 57.
Right.
Yeah. And it says, oh, I'm sorry, that's an October issue. So it's not in this print. So I'll take that up later. All right. We're good. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, President Gray. I just would like to say that when we do our boardwalk, it's really been helpful for General Manager McElhaney to answer some of the questions that I have about these expenses. So I just wanted to do a public thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Scott.
Yeah, likewise.
Director Thomas, I'm working on getting you some of those details in terms of why last year was more expensive. We haven't, between LAFCO today and some of our boardwalks and the other things that are going on in the district, we just haven't been able to do a deep dive into that. So
Yeah.
I should have an update for you on our next boardwalk.
It's been one flood after another. I appreciate it.
Yeah, could just be timing of some of the permit renewals or updates and things like that too. I guess if are there any requests to move any item off this agenda, consent agenda? I believe not, right? So I'll public comment. Take a public comment on the consent agenda.
President Gray, could I just ask one more question?
You may.
Okay, so it's on page 64, and it's under the minutes, and under 5B, it said Vice President Scott reported that, and I'm sorry, but I don't know what I reported.
We have met with confidential administrative assistant, Mrs. Dodson, and we were researching what you stated.
Okay, thank you.
I can
updated.
I believe I can chime in.
Sure.
As I recall, that line should simply read, a written report was provided after the agenda packet was posted.
Which one is this exactly?
So on page 64, the policy committee report, we got the copy posted on the website following the issuance of the agenda packet. So that's why it wasn't in the report. So pretty sure that's what you want to say there is a written report was provided after the agenda packet was posted.
So that Vice President Scott reported that is replaced by a written report was provided after the agenda was posted? That we're looking
Pretty
at?
sure that's what happened.
Okay, good. Just replace that wording. Okay. No further questions or comments? Public comment? I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda as a whole.
Well, I'll entertain all of us by saying that I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that this board approve the consent agenda. Can I have a roll call?
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Hey.
Director Dean?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. I'd like to call a short recess here, about 10 minutes. We get back at 2:50, I guess it would be, and then we'll deal with the regular business. Uh, 2:50, just after 2:50 p.m. We're moving on to regular business. There are two items, and I'll start with 7A. Discussion and consideration of adoption of resolution 02224, authorizing a salary increase for management and confidential employees group and amending the CCSD salary schedule and approval of the management and confidential employees group payment and compensation plan. Turn this over to General Manager McElhaney.
Thank you, President Gray. Again, agenda item 7A is discussion and consideration of adoption of a resolution 02-2024, authorizing a salary increase for our management and confidential employees group and amending the CCSD salary schedule to approve of the Management Confidential Employees Group Payment and Compensation Plan. We went into closed session to make some adjustments to our payment and compensation plan for the management group. There were some things that were removed, some things that were added, and we discussed a cost of living adjustment of 3% for the next 3 years. The fiscal impact, we were changing our administrative leave for the management confidential group from 40 hours to 80 hours, and that will be approximately a $23,000 impact. We also increased some of the, in terms of amending the salary schedule, there were some adjustments to our minimum wage for the reserve firefighters, which is, those positions are slowly being phased out as we added our full-time, our third full-time staff member to the fire department. The justification behind just a little bit of background for the justification of shifting from the 40 hours to an 80-hour work week, with the elimination of some positions in the admin department, and currently the amount of work that our staff is putting in, that again, they're exempt, they're not necessarily, there's no overtime for over 40 hours a week. So a lot of our management staff is working long hours. There's lots of communications that happen at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Mr. Green and myself were on the NCAC meeting last night till about 9 o'clock. So some of those extra hours are not captured within the previous administration leave policy, so to speak, or allotment that was in the MC group. So we decided in closed session to bring that up to 80 hours to compensate. And so staff is able to use some of those hours for a vacation or time off, or basically to recoup some of that extra time spent weekly. And with that, additionally, with that payment compensation plan, we brought the fire chief into the MCE group. Traditionally, Cambria has had the fire chief be on an employment agreement. We spoke with district council, some of the other communities that have fire chief positions, and a lot of them are brought into the management group, not necessarily on an employment agreement. So now we have brought the fire chief into that circle that includes our administrative department, finance manager, confidential administration, Mr. Geary in facilities and resources, Mr. Green, Mr. Reaper. So now he's a part of that group and not on an employment agreement. So the only remaining employment agreement in the district is myself. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, any questions from the board? Director Dean.
Okay, just for clarification, under fiscal impact in your introduction, it says the first year impact will be a 3% salary increase effective January 18th for approximately 6 months of the fiscal year. I believe you meant of the current fiscal year, because the remainder of the current fiscal year, because in the resolution, it says a 3% salary increase each year over a 3-year period, and that year one is effective January 18th. And I'm assuming that's through until the next year two, which is January 18th, 2025. So what you're referring to is the remainder of the current fiscal year? Okay, but the 3% increase follows through until January 18th, 2025, and then it renews.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep,
That's it.
I had a quick question about that too. I think my understanding of that is that the 3% becomes effective today, and then that's $6,000 increase is just how it applies to the current fiscal year. In the next fiscal year, there will be an adjustment, correct? Based on that increase, which will be continuing, yeah, to next
Correct,
January.
President,
Okay, yeah. Mr. Thomas, Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. In the plan itself, on page 90, at page 12 of the plan, just a couple questions, and I don't know whether we take these out at this time or in the next round, but just worth raising. On page 90, if you look at 4.8 other allowances, line 3, employees in the O&M unit shall receive a clothing allowance of $250 each year, payable in July. Yeah, reasonable. Then you look at number 5, and it sounds like, well, we may buy everybody 5 sets of clothing. And it just kind of, that's one area where I scratch my head and say, that seems funny to do both. It's almost like paying for my gas and also paying for vehicle mileage. You can do one or the other, but you generally don't do both. So that's one issue. Shall I just kind of bring up the several questions I have, or one at a time?
Several questions, maybe, if it's not too many.
Gotcha.
As
Yeah,
a-
just
as a
two
group,
more.
As a group.
And 4.10 relocation allowance. I hadn't seen this before, and I was kind of excited to see that there is a sense of a relocation allowance. But then, as you read it, it almost couldn't be more vague. Like, under what conditions do we provide a relocation allowance? And I could see it in the interest of planet Earth to pay a relocation allowance for folks to relocate to Cambria, where the costs might be higher. But I've seen relocation policies before, and they're usually quite specific and detailed about under what conditions relocation reimbursements are provided. This is entirely too vague. Yeah, that's.
Is that it?
I think
Okay,
those
thank you.
Two
Thank you.
issues I would raise for question.
Okay. General Manager McElhenney.
Yes, thank you, President Gray and Director Thomas. And I might be let Mr. Green jump in on this because this really has to do, and even Mr. Geary, in terms of operation and maintenance unit. So I would think that those operations maintenance unit, the way it's described there, encompasses our water, wastewater, and facilities and resources. Yeah, so the 250 uniform allowance, and then I could see how some details might need to be cleared up in the next section. The only thing, and again, this document was here before my tenure, and when we brought it to closed sessions, I didn't necessarily bring the entire document up for negotiations, just specific pieces of it. So some of this we just missed in terms of being able to clean it up. My interpretation of it is that with the district's sole discretion that we can award more clothing, and my guess is because of the wear and tear that operations has on that clothing. However, when you look at the language, it talks about the previous year's clothing, which would insinuate that, again, another $250 has been allocated to the employee to replace clothing. But I will ask Jim if he has any insight on this. He's been as a part of this group for a little longer than I have, and this sounds like it applies specifically to his division.
Mr. Green?
I'm sorry, are you guys there? There you go.
We're here, yes.
Technical difficulty, I apologize. I believe we're talking about, I'm sorry, I was on a call, I kind of joined in at the end here. I believe we're talking about like what we refer to as the pant and boot allowance.
Yes, so there's a section in our payment and compensation plan under other allowances that talks about the operations and maintenance unit. There's an annual stipend of $250 for uniforms, and then there's a section which allows the district at its sole discretion to provide following articles of clothing annually after inspection of the previous year's clothing, up to 5 long sleeve shirts, 5 short sleeve jacket, plus hats as needed. And my interpretation of that is that specifically applies to your operations unit, facilities and resources, because of the physical nature of the job.
That does, and so that inspection annually is still in place. Most guys, these are heavy shirts that you do, you work in. I mean, you can imagine after working in wastewater at the plant for a year, that shirt's, it's run its duty cycle there. The water guys don't go through their uniform tops as quickly. And they're heavy shirts, they're kind of hard to move in. So after a year or so, they're kind of broken. So we don't really seek that much as far as replacing every 5 shirts for every operator every year. Usually every other year, somebody will grab a couple, long sleeve or shorter sleeve shirts. And that's kind of how we reciprocate and get old. Obviously, we don't want to send some, a drinking water operator agent out to somebody's house in some ratty old shirt that looks like he crawled out of the riverbed on with. So I think we stay clothed and looking presentable, but don't really exercise that full use of changing out 5 shirts every year for every single operator.
Yeah, and additionally, this is really limited to our wastewater superintendent, our water superintendent, and Mr. Green and Mr. Reaper, who doesn't really need the operational piece of it. But again, there's probably some cleanup that could be done in that area of the document. But I think, like Mr. Green said, we're really not using it to its full extent. There's just not a lot of replacing of uniforms, even though there is an option for it. As far as the relocation allowance, Director Thomas, again, that was before my time about that piece being in there. I do understand that aspect of it. The general manager was authorized to do that. Just anecdotally from my position and my having talked with staff, it's pretty difficult, even with staff being well compensated, to relocate to Cambria, afford the housing. If they have young ones or a spouse that works out of the area, whether that be Paso Robles or Templeton, Morro Bay. So I think that's why they maybe left it a little bit broader, so it's not specifically relocation to Cambria. But as far as any of these changes, after speaking with council, again, it would have to be taken back to closed session. I don't know if that's something that the board would like to revisit in a year, or if it's something that they would like to see changed right away, but we're open to that if it needs to happen.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Thomas, any more questions?
Yeah, I'm happy either way. I'd like it, brought up because these don't seem sufficiently tight to be in the document. But I also appreciate that obviously this has been here for probably many years, and it's just my first pass to have a look at it. So I'm quite happy to address it in this time frame, or the next time it comes around. Yeah, it's good to check when would that be another pass to have a look at it.
Yeah, thank you. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, President Gray. I have 2 questions. One is on the bottom of page 75, and it's the very last line, and it says a 9% salary increase over 3 years starting January 18th, 2024. And my understanding is it's a 3% increase per year. Okay, so are they tiers, or is it 3%? Let's say I make $10 an hour. The first year at $10.30. So is it 3% on top of the $10.30? So it's more than 9%.
Is it compounded?
Yes.
Well, yes, when it's a 3%, it's based 3% increase on your salary for the year in which you are in. So for first year, 3%.
Yeah.
Now you have a new salary schedule, essentially, for the following year, and then the following step would be 3% and so on.
So it's a more than a 9% salary increase.
Right. The point is, with compounding, that would become 9.27%.
Yeah. And that's really fine. I just want to make sure that it's clear.
My comment on that is there a convention for describing these salaries? Because you always have three. You have annual salaries that add up to a certain number. But of course, Vice President Scott is right on the math, because it's a little more than 9%. If you
in employment agreements like this, I have never seen it described with the compounding interest number.
Yeah.
It's just been described as the percentage increase that the employees will get each year. So it's 3% a year.
Yeah.
If you're comparing it to where we started from, then yes.
Yeah.
I have not ever seen it described that way within an employment agreement, but that's not saying that we can't
No, I'm
do
just
that.
saying, no, I'm just saying that stating that it's a 9% salary increase is not accurate. And you know what? It's not a big deal. But I did want to say that. Then the other thing was the board, the 40 to the 80 hours, 40 hours of, what did you call it?
Administration leave.
Administrative leave. So our question, my question early on was, so what if somebody gets, because they get it once a year, what if they get it in December and they leave in January? Is it a partial amount or anything like that? So it was changed to every 6 months, and I think that was a really good decision.
Yes, Vice President Scott, we changed it to the allocation in January and then another allocation in July of 40 apiece.
So, good, thank you. Any other questions? Director Farmer? Oh, Director Dean, I'm sorry, Director Dean.
I think it's clear enough in the resolution that it's a 3% salary increase each year. So the 9% is in the staff report. In the resolution, I think it's stated correctly, it's 3% each year.
Yeah, and I just didn't want the public to.
Right.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. So I'm looking here on page 78, where we have a description of the salaries of the various employees. And as we can see up at the top, where the print is basically in black, and we have employees making anywhere from, let's say, 45,000 to 79,000, and even more than that, 96,000. But and then we have down here in red, where most folks are making, six-figure salaries. Now, we have great staff everywhere in this district, and I have no quarrel with the fact that they earn their money. Maybe it's because of where I'm at this board with regard to salary and background and that type of thing, that I'm a little bit more, I don't want to say sensitive to, but when I think about how hard a lot of people are working out there in the workaday world and barely making it with regard to paying rent, putting food on the table, buying clothes for the kids, that type of thing. And then I see people, like I say, with six-figure salaries who I know also have expenses, getting a 3% increase when a lot of the people I just described aren't getting any salary increase. And folks, let's say, on fixed incomes in our community, such as Social Security and so forth, once again, just kind of barely hanging on. And I'm just expressing the concern that I think other people might have for people that are making a sufficient income, getting a salary increase when it isn't necessarily happening to people that that barely have a sufficient income for the basics. So I'm just speaking up in that regard, and I hope that, and like I say, this is nothing personal against anybody. I am humbled by the work that so many of our staff do out in the field, as well as the folks sitting across from me. But I'm just expressing my feeling about giving people that, like I say, to me, already make a comfortable salary a raise. And I hope I'm not off base here. I hope people understand kind of where I'm coming from. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, prior to taking a motion, the issues I had raised, I had asked but didn't hear an answer, like what would the process be for addressing those issues in either this or a future revision? And if it's a future revision, when would that occur?
General Manager McElhaney?
So there's a couple different ways to look at it. You know, if there was a motion and approval of the amendment to the salary schedule and the compensation plan, in theory, unless directed to, the salary schedule would be in place and we would not bring it back before you for any adjustments unless the management confidential group is again looking for a cost of living adjustment or something of that nature. I believe we can bring it back in a year. It's really at the will of the board if they would like to bring back or open up negotiations with between the general manager and the management group. And that can be directed, I believe, at any time. So it's really the will of the board whether or not they want to direct me to go back into closed session and make adjustments to this payment and compensation plan. Maybe Mr. Carmel could chime in a little bit on that.
No, you're absolutely accurate. It's up to the board as to when they want to bring it back and whether they want to do that in closed session or open session. Of course, there's negotiations involved here once you have this on the books, but you have discretion to bring it back when you want to consider it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, hearing that, I would suggest we direct staff to sort this out now.
Just, but first of all, before a motion of any kind, I need to call for public comment. Is there any?
No.
Okay, no public comment. Please continue, Director Thomas.
So should I make a motion then?
You may make a motion, yes.
I guess I would move that we approve the Resolution 02-2024 authorizing a salary increase for the MCE employees and amending the salary schedule as written, and direct staff to review the payment and compensation plan for potential clarification to Articles 4.8.3 and 4.8.5 and Article 4.10, the reallocation allowance.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Director Dean seconds. It's been moved and seconded that, and I will briefly describe this, that the salary increase and as described, and the amended salary schedule be approved for the MCE group with the additional instructions that the staff proceed to review and bring back to the board, I assume for proposals, for clarification of sections 4.8A3 and 4.8A5 and 4.10. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so can I have a roll call on that?
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
I'm going to abstain, thanks.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the final regular business item, 7B. This is a review of a item we discussed, I think, 2 meetings ago. The Board Policy 1040.2 regarding response to correspondence to the board. Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you. Agenda item 7B, discussion and consideration of approval of board policy 1040.2 regarding the response to correspondence for the board. There's no fiscal impact associated with this item. The policy committee met on December 28th, 2023 to review and discuss the attached draft policy regarding response to correspondence to the board. Committee made minor revisions, approved the draft policy, and recommended forwarding it to the board of directors, again, for consideration and adoption. and their recommendations are attached.
Yeah, thank you. I might turn this over to Vice President Scott just for a little more explanation.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. You have a red line policy version in your packet, and the red changes are what you all suggested at the last board meeting. The blue changes are what the committee recommended at their policy committee meeting. And I'm open for any questions.
Director Dean.
I think this looks great. I think the policy committee did a good job. They captured everything that the board recommended. And I think the recommendations of the policy committee in blue are right on as well. Good job.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or Dr. Thomas, anybody? Dr. Farmer? Okay.
Thank you, President Gray. I concur.
Yeah. Oh, I'll entertain a motion then. Oh, wait,
I'm happy to move.
public comment, first public comment. Is there any public comment?
No.
Don't want to raise the head too high. Yeah, I'll entertain a motion, please. Director Dean.
I move we approve board policy 1040.2 regarding response to correspondence to the board as presented in this agenda packet.
And I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded that the board approve the new board policy 1040.2 regarding response to correspondence to the board. Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Teen?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye.
Could
Thank
I
you.
just say one thing?
Yes.
Thank you
Certainly.
very much. This has been at least a couple years in the making, and so I really appreciate the approval by the board. Thank you. And I especially appreciate the work done by the policy committee.
Yes. This has been a long time coming. It's taken a few bounces back and forth, so I'm glad we're way wound it up. I think we move now to future agenda items. Opportunity to request a formal agenda item report be prepared in the item placed on the future agenda. I think as we customarily do, we'll have Ms. Dodson refresh us on what is already on the docket for future meetings.
Sure. On February 8th, we'll be receiving community input for the strategic plan accomplishments, current internal strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and the vision for Cambria. And the public has the opportunity to submit their anonymous comments to the confidential administrative assistant, myself, up until February 8th. So you can do that on the website, and we have been blasting that out on social media and through the other platforms. We will also be discussing and considering the strategic plan update, holding a discussion regarding the 2024 fire hazard fuel reduction program process and deadlines, and a discussion regarding development of a civil administrative citation program violation of district regulations. On February 15th, we will be receiving and filing the second quarter budget report. We'll be discussing annual updates to the board and standing committee bylaws, holding a discussion regarding the zero liquid discharge pilot testing program, discussing policy 1045 legal counsel and auditor policy, and a discussion and consideration of the proposed pros committee goals and objectives. And finally, on February 26th, the board will be holding their strategic plan workshop to receive additional community input for the strategic plan accomplishments, internal strengths, internal weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and also the vision for Cambria. And they will be adjourning to a special meeting on Monday, March 4th at 8:30 to facilitate the workshop to update the CCSD strategic plan and set a date for the next strategic plan workshop.
Thank you, Ms. Dodson. I might ask a question, and maybe since Director Dean is on the ad hoc committee, basically preparing the strategic plan session. There are two comment dates. There's February 8th and February 26th. The public, just to clarify to the public, what is the difference between the two of them? And can you comment during both, Director Dean?
Yes, you can comment during both, but the comments that are received by February 8th will what's the word, collated, condensed down, and given to the workshop participants prior to the workshop, to be considered as they develop their own input, their own SWOT analysis and vision statements. And then on February 26th, we will be receiving more public comment at the last minute, but obviously they will be taken in consideration, but will not have been part of the consolidated comments that we will be receiving before making our own as workshop participants. And perhaps Director Thomas, since he's part of this ad hoc committee too, would like to add to what I just said.
Director Thomas?
Thank you. That's precisely correct. On February 8th, we were looking to ensure that the public has opportunity for input early that will influence the thinking of the workshop participants as they're preparing their input. So the February 8th input will be consolidated and provided to each workshop participant before the workshop participants organize their thoughts. So that gives the public input greater influence over the process. And February 26th, as a mandatory part of the public comment of a special meeting, President Dean characterized that precisely.
Yeah. It's still worth, if you missed the February 8th, it's still worth commenting on the 26th. I would add, because there will be a 1 week, we adjourn for a week and come back for the day-long actual planning session on March 4th. And so we have a lot of time to absorb and think about the comments that have been made on the 26th too, but it's obvious that both dates are important for the public to understand and to know about. So is there any, in addition to what Ms. Dodson was outlining, what we're talking about with the strategic plan workshop, any other requests for future agenda items to be placed on the agenda? Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. I don't know if this is necessarily an agenda item, but at some point, since it's an issue that's going to come up sooner or later, and we've already discussed it off and on, how do we get in conjunction with the county to have Rodeo Grounds Road paved, the entrance to the East Ranch, recreational opportunities when they do happen? That has to happen, and it's a county road, yet it's entering the park that we're going to be creating. So somehow that road just needs to be improved, and I think anybody that's driven on it knows that. And so it seems like at some point we need to address connecting with the county and somehow getting that done in one fashion or another.
Any other suggestions?
I think the general manager wishes to say something.
General Manager McLean.
We can start planning, strategizing. We were on the NCAC meeting last night, and there's county representation there, so we can start to broach that discussion at those meetings. As we start to look at the community park master plan and what we're going to be doing with the East Ranch, the relocating of the facilities and resources department out of that floodplain, that could be a part of that discussion and try to put it all together. So we can definitely put that on our radar.
Yeah, I second Director Farmer's concern about that road, which you really notice the deficiencies in the rainy season, and they're all over your car. And I know, just as the public is clear about our level, our power in this, we do not have jurisdiction over roads. We can obviously make our wishes known to the county in any way we can. It is something that the county is responsible for, but I totally agree with the problem, that there's a problem that has been neglected for forever, pretty much. I'd love to see it rectified somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Director, okay. Sometimes I see Director Thomas's face up there, and I don't know if he wants to talk or not.
Sure, thank you. Just wanted to, pile on that discussion and just clarify that at the last PROS meeting, we did discuss our goals and objectives. The getting Rodeo Drive paved to the community park did come up as one of the top goals. We'll be discussing that at a future meeting, but that's in terms of our draft goals. That is one of the top goals that certainly the pros committee wants to influence, and Vice Chair Shannon Sutherland volunteered with enthusiasm to provide energy on moving that forward.
Thank you. Are there any, Director Farmer?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know. I don't know if Director Thomas realized what he just said there, but he said Rodeo Drive. Now, I haven't been in Beverly Hills recently, so I don't know how the roads are down there, but it's Rodeo Grounds Road. I just comment on that, you know. So Rodeo Drive is probably one of the wealthiest streets on the planet.
It's not. Let me
It
tell
tells you
you.
where I grew up. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a long ways from Rodeo Drive, but yeah, good catch.
And I think it's rodeo out here, isn't it?
It's a rodeo.
Okay. So any more, if there are no more, any public comment on future agenda items? I don't want to neglect that.
No.
Okay. So if there's no more further future agenda items or comment thereon, I hereby declare this meeting adjourned at 3:27 p.m.